This
All right.
conference will now be recorded.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you all for dialing in. I
Okay.
am Todd Hood, the Vice President of Council Services for the Far West Ski Association, and you are participating in Sips and Snacks with the Treasurers. So tonight is an opportunity for us to hear from some experienced and I'll call it veteran. I won't say old, Randy, but
Yeah,
from
understand.
some uh, to hear it from the horse's mouth, if you will, but to really hear um, best practices, some lessons learned, tools and tricks and tips uh, from those individuals who've served in the role of treasurer and financial management. So tonight we have Randy Lew, who is the current treasurer, and I think this is your second term serving as treasurer of Far West, and you've served as a few terms. Well, not second term. We'll say multiple terms, but second time. And then as well, president, served as president of the Far West Ski Association. And then we also have dialing in is Joel James, who is also serving in his second time as treasurer for the national office for the National Brotherhood of Skiers. He's also served as treasurer
No
of the
sports.
Thank you. National Brother of Snow Sports, Brotherhood of Snow Sports. The name is in process of being changed. And has also, Joel has served as the treasurer for the Western region and then as president of his club. And Randy as well has served at the Bay Area Snow Sports Council as on club levels additionally. And these two gentlemen are going to be moderated by Brenda Holden, who is the current director of the National Brotherhood of Snow Sports, Western Region, and a past treasurer as well as at the council level as well as at the club level for snow sports or for Snow Busters Ski Club of Pasadena, my home ski club as well. So I'll let Brenda take it from here. And we've got, as I mentioned, Brenda's the moderator. Randy and Joel are panelists. But we also want to hear from those of you who have served in the role of treasurer or in the role of financial management. Many times, those of you that have served as president are also working on financial management. So we have a panel, but I want to make sure that everyone feels welcome to raise your hand or put into the chat box. I will be monitoring the chat box to add or to bring forward anything that's in the chat box. But if you would like to say something, then definitely feel free to raise your hand and unmute yourself and share in. We've got about an hour and a half, and I've chewed up about 10 minutes of it. So let's go ahead and get started. Brenda, take it away.
Good evening, everybody. So I first want to introduce my two speakers tonight. So let's introduce Randy. Even though Todd gave him a little brief overview of what he's done, I want him to speak to you guys directly. It's all about you, Randy.
Okay. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes,
I
I hear you.
I have actually had
Don't ever
40-year
tell
career,
people about him.
about a
Don't ever
40-year
what?
career in accounting, finance, information systems. Uh, Started as a ski club treasurer back in the late 70s for Modesto Ski Club. Went on to become council treasurer in the 80s, and also treasurer of Bay Area Council Open League Racing for about a 6-year term. I did my first stint as Far West treasurer starting in, I believe, 1990 or 91. So I go back a few years there.
Thank you. Jill, it's all about you.
Hey, thank you. Yeah, so similar to Randy, I've worked with clubs at the club level, as well as at the national level for the ski organization. I actually started as a club participant back in the early 90s. And from there, being a member of 70 Ski here in Sacramento, I kind of increased my participation and kind of stepped it up and eventually became a president of the club and then moving on to the regional treasurer's position and then ultimately becoming the national treasurer for the Brotherhood of Snow Sports. In addition to the industry, I've also been treasurer for accounting associations as well as the homeowners association. And so I kind of, like dealing with the aspect of finances when it comes to, donating time and supporting different organizations.
Thank you. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about me. So I have been a CFO for the last 6 years, I think. I have been the treasurer for my club, which is Snowbusters. I was the financial secretary for the region. I was the treasurer for the region. Now I'm currently the director for the region. So, and I've been in accounting and finance all of my life. So that's a little bit about myself. So how this is going to go, I'm going to ask Joel or Randy a question, and then the other person will also respond to the same question. So let's start this off. So the role of a treasurer is a big job. What is it about the role that you enjoy? Randy.
Oh, there are very fun instances and things I do enjoy. The contract review and the reporting aspects of it. At the Far West level, we have different levels of reporting, and it's making sure that we design our chart of accounts and financial and reporting system to meet those needs. We run quite a few trips, so it's reporting for the trips, reporting for the convention, and the big picture aspects of it are what I enjoy.
Joe, the same question?
Yeah, I just like being a part of the organizations uh, and, knowing and understanding what their missions and their objectives are and knowing, that the financial role plays a part in that whole process to help them get to where they need to be in terms of, financially and fiscally solvent to make their objectives come true. And so for me, the benefit is more about being a part of organizations that support a good cause and helping them in that effort to achieve those objectives. I've worked in finance for a long time, and I've always enjoyed working in financial. So for me, it's just about supporting the organizations that I'm a part of, whether it's a ski club, a county association, or at one time when I was a homeowner association treasurer, just being a part of that community and helping that community with their finances is something that I enjoy.
Next question. What do you think makes the role difficult, and how do you overcome those challenges? Joe.
For me, you know, I don't really see the role as being difficult, um, and nor do I see it as being challenging. But what I do see is standing, in the path of being able to meet the challenge. And so, there are things that come up that, you know, we have to, kind of go back and forth and discuss and try to come up with a resolution for. But at the end of the day, when it comes to the financials, that's, just something that I enjoy doing. So, um, to me, a difficult part would mean that there's a challenge, and the challenge is really what I look forward to. So um, I wouldn't say that there's a difficult part of being a treasurer. I mean, if you like the financial side and dealing with that aspect, which is what I pretty much get out of it. And we do get challenges from different areas, but for the most part, it's an easy way to stay out of the politics. To say when you're just working on the financial aspects. And so I guess to say that there's a difficult or challenging part of the work, I don't really see it that way, but more so as a part of a challenge that I enjoy encountering.
Randy, same questions. Do you see any
Yeah,
difficulty?
I think that the difficult is really working with some people not following directions, not following guidelines, uh, getting the required information for me to cut a check, for instance, and getting the necessary backup can be challenging.
So what tools do you use to make your job easier? Randy.
Uh, with our major programs, we use Dropbox a lot. Uh, those directors will drop their information into Dropbox, and I'll pull it out of there. Check request, deposit information, etc. Uh, and then Excel. Couldn't live without Excel in a financial world.
At all. I understand that completely. Joe, what tools do you use to make the job easier?
Yeah, so I think what's important to make the financial side of the job easier is number one, having a good solid software. Um, and there are various ones that are out there, whether it's Peachtree or QuickBooks or some of the other ones. But you more so want to find out what is going to be suited for the job and the role that you're looking to perform. So having a good, solid, supportive uh, software system makes it a lot easier. And then also, being able to work with other programs such as Excel, as Randy mentioned, and then to have communication tools such as this interface that we're interacting through right now. I mean, it makes the communication process a lot easier when we need to meet and discuss issues that are related to the financials. But yeah, I would say the accounting software is important as well as communication software in order to be able to communicate and report the information that you're providing to the organization.
So when you were setting up your chart of accounts, what lessons did you learn? Joe?
So, when it comes to chart of accounts, those are accounts that you expect to get it right when you set them up. And so, um, what I've found is that over time, it's always good to revisit those chart of accounts because, sometimes, people tend to set up a chart of accounts and stick with that and just make everything fit into that chart of accounts. But year after year, you find that there are other types of transactions that may not be inclusive of that chart of accounts, and you may need to update it. And so that's something I think is important for everybody to consider at the end of every, whether it's the end of every fiscal cycle or reporting period, that you review and update those accounts as necessary so that it can be tailored to the specific goals and objectives of the transactions that you're going to expect to see for the organization.
Randy, same question?
Yeah, I take a little different tact with charting accounts and look at what the reporting requirements are. And once you can determine what your reporting requirements are, you can design your chart of accounts to fit those reporting requirements and making sure that you have the buckets where you need the buckets to report what you need to report. With Far West, we use QuickBooks, and I've designed the chart of accounts like a traditional business chart of accounts. In other words, 100 accounts are assets, 200 accounts liabilities, 500 would be sales revenue, 600 cost of sales, 700 accounts would be program accounts, and the 800 general administrative type accounts. And we also use a lot of the class accounting available in QuickBooks too for our various cost centers. And we report by cost center also.
So what are some of the lessons that you've learned in creating a budget? It's going to be a two-part question. So do you use a blank slate, or do you use the previous year budget to put together the current year budget? So actually a little three questions.
Okay,
Joe.
who's going? Okay, I'll go. At Far West, we do not use a blank slate. We use a formatted Excel worksheet, which breaks it out by class or cost center, and it has the 2 previous years' budgets plus the previous year actual information on it. And then we work from there to create the budgets based on the programs that we anticipate doing the following year.
Joe?
Yeah, so I think it's important to, no matter what organization it is, when it comes time to prepare that budget, number one is to make sure everybody is clear and understand that it is a budget, and it is a plan, and not necessarily something that's going to happen exactly how it's planned. And so to use what has worked in the past and a template that would support the prior budget and build from that is typically a better way to go, instead of starting from scratch every new budget cycle, unless it's your first budget or first year in business, or moving forward with the organization. But thereafter, you tend to want to take what you built off of with the previous year and use that as a comparison. In some cases, there may be budget items that were planned that didn't actually happen. So you will want to, during that budget process, evaluate if or not something will be expected to occur or happen in the upcoming period. And if not, then most likely you're not going to include that budget line item. Or it may be determined that you need to increase that budget line item based on the reality of what had occurred in the previous cycle. And so I think it's important to build off of your previous budget and make adaptations to what the reality of the period actually ended up as being. And then also note that throughout the year and the cycle, you may have to revisit those budgets and make adjustments, because if you originally anticipated receiving funds for one item, and it turns out that those funds actually in reality were less than what was anticipated with that original plan or budget, then you may have to resort to cutting other expenditures in order to keep that budget in balance. And so I think it's important to make sure that you're monitoring and reviewing that budget on an ongoing basis throughout the year and being in a position to pivot when necessary, when adjustments are needed for those budgets.
What were some lessons learned in getting your budget approved? And who approves your budget? Joe.
Usually there is a consensus of an approving of a budget approval process. And so if there's a board of about 10 members, then usually there's a discussion amongst those board members that will make that decision to either approve, make adjustments, and then at some point, accept that budget. And so um, the executive body of the organization is responsible for approving those budgets after having discussion and going through those budget line items to make sure that everybody is on the same page with the path forward or that they plan to follow.
Randy, who approves your budget?
Yeah, very similar there. We go through a detailed review at our first board of directors meeting of the year. Uh, make changes to the proposed budgets, adjustments. We get buy-in from each of our functional vice presidents, and that budget must be approved by the Far West Board of Directors, which is a 26, actually 27 member board of directors now.
Okay, so what were some lessons learned when you presented your financial statements and your board had multiple questions concerning that financial statement? So let's go with a monthly financial statement. I don't know, do you guys do monthly reviews of your financials, or do you do quarterly, or do you do yearly? Randy.
Ours is roughly quarterly. So I'll prepare the financials, downloading from QuickBooks into our Excel workbook, and then doing a roll up by each of our cost centers to a summary, and that goes to the board, and that then is reviewed at our, say, quarterly board meeting. What I've learned is that I take because we travel to our board meetings and I don't carry a whole lot of paper with me. I will scan each and every check and deposit that's made into the various accounts. We have 6 different bank accounts that we deal with and write a large program. So I'll scan the checks and deposits, so have PDFs available to answer questions that I don't know off the top.
Jill, how do you handle your how do you handle your financial statements, and what do you do to provide that information to your board? And is it done monthly, quarterly, yearly?
Yeah, so I'm kind of from my role in different organizations as a financial person, and really I think it depends on the nature of the organization. If there are quarterly meetings or if there are monthly meetings or bi-monthly meetings. So whenever those meetings occur, you want to be in a position to have financials ready to report at that given time. I prefer reporting on a monthly basis because you get monthly bank statements and you reconcile those more frequently to know and understand the transactions that are flowing through those accounts. And if something occurs that's questionable, it's easier to catch it in a timely manner. Um, when it comes to answering questions and dealing with the audience, whether it's the board members or membership at large, You usually tend to, I guess the best practice would be to speak the reality of what's occurring and make sure that, you are uh, aware of and in tune with those financials so that when the question comes up about a certain expenditure or a certain income, you're in the best position to answer it truthfully and accurately. Because really the goal of the financial person is to paint a financial picture that can be communicated to the audience that you're reporting for. And so, for me, the more frequent reporting, I think the better. But again, it may depend on the organization because if a quarterly meeting is necessary, then quarterly reports are most likely going to be suitable for that type of meeting cycle.
Brenda, I
Yeah,
have a chat. I have a question in the chat for Randy. That was, did you say 6 different accounts? And why do you have so many? Why do you have so many accounts?
Far West has 6 different bank accounts. Uh, 4 of those accounts are travel related. Because we are a California corporation, we must follow the California cellular travel laws in regards to our travel accounting and bank accounts. So 2 of our travel accounts, both our North American and international, are trust accounts, which are monies held for future trips. And then we have 2 travel operating accounts and a general account. In our next largest event is our convention. We have a separate convention bank account.
Thank you.
And we do have different signers on each of those accounts.
Okay, let's
Now,
change this.
I just wanted to go back to that last one. While I said that Far West reports quarterly, we also post current, and we reconcile the bank accounts at the end of each month, all 6 of them. So we're current as far as all the posting and QuickBooks information is. It's just that our reporting to the board of directors is roughly quarterly.
So let's change our topic. It's still going to be about accounting, but taxes. So how do you guys file your state and federal taxes? Joe.
So it's a process of having to know what the filing dates are and the timing, and being able to set a calendar for all of the reporting of the information to um, uh, get submitted. And so the calendar, whether it's a state secretary that you're filing with, or it's the annual 990 with the IRS, um, those are the uh, pretty much, especially for nonprofits, the lifeline of staying um, um, in good terms with the state as well as the federal government by making sure that those tax returns are filed. So it's important to make sure that you're maintaining documents throughout the cycle so that when the time comes to compile everything, and I like what Randy said earlier, like with the chart of accounts being set up to support those buckets that you're going to need to classify on those forms that you report. And so, being able to pull all that together, each year in order to submit those required tax forms and information, I think is important. But also during the year, making sure that you're keeping track of things such as the documentation to support, contractors that you do business with, documentation to support where you're giving or you're receiving grants and donations. And if you're giving something in return, what is the value of what somebody, like for example, a registration cost? What would be the value or the actual um, taxable deduction for that participant, so that they are aware of the portion that actually goes towards the cost of the registration or the event, and the portion that is contribute considered a contribution, so that they can use that as a tax write-off. And so, during the year, you want to keep track of those types of details, so that when you get to the end of the year and the time comes to report to those government agencies, you have that information readily available to prepare the tax forms that's necessary.
So how hard was it, and you guys probably weren't even around when this occurred, but I'm sure you do understand the process. How hard was it for, how hard is it to obtain nonprofit status? Randy?
Oh,
And
Far
keeping
West.
it.
Far West is a 501c7 social club under the IRS.
Okay.
That was in place when I first, it was reestablished in 1985. Uh, and that was in place. Uh, we did have an IRS audit in the early 2000s, which changed the way that we did our reporting and the way that we've prepared our tax returns since. Uh, so, in a nutshell, we take the P&L that comes out that we design that comes out of QuickBooks, and I roll it into an Excel workbook, and we do a lot of reclassifications based on the auditor's letter that we got to give us a tax advantage.
Okay.
But yeah, we file 4 different tax returns, federal 990, 990T, and California 109, 199. And we also have a tax advisor volunteer position on our board of directors, which assists in preparing the actual returns themselves.
Joe, what does the NBS do to obtain
Well,
their
I've
non?
never, yeah, I wasn't a part, or with any organization, I haven't been a part of that process of setting up or establishing it as a nonprofit, but those um, uh, uh, designations were already in place. As a incoming treasurer for a nonprofit, your goal and role will be to maintain that nonprofit status. And the way you maintain it, kind of, off of what I was saying earlier, is making sure that you're submitting those annual reports to the um, respective agencies, so that you stay in good standing with those agencies and they don't revoke your nonprofit status. And so as long as you're reporting and you're meeting the goals and objectives of what the nonprofit status is suited for, then as a treasurer, that's what part of your job is, to make sure that you maintain that status by being able to report as needed. But yeah, I haven't had any experience with going through the process of submitting the documentation to um, gain that nonprofit status. It's already been in place for the organizations that I've been a part of.
So what could somebody do that does not have any accounting background? Could they ever serve as treasurer? Randy?
Without an accounting background, it can be difficult. Uh, I think a club treasurer position, which is where I first came up, is the easiest way to start, and generally clubs have a lot less uh, a lot less activity and less technical issues, uh, which is a good place for them to start. Uh, and the new accounting software, such as QuickBooks or Peachtree, makes things fairly easy to understand in the post. It's not like the old days. When I first started as Far West Treasurer, we were posting to spreadsheets manually. And then I remember I wrote an Lotus 123 general ledger program back in the early 90s, which took about 4 hours to run. But yeah, the new accounting software is pretty intuitive.
Joe, same question.
Yes. Um, can you repeat the question? I just want to make sure I'm understanding it again.
So the question is, if somebody wanted to be treasurer and they didn't have any accounting background, what could they do to serve as a treasurer? I mean, how can they become a treasurer?
Yeah.
What
So I
steps
think,
would they take? What steps would
yeah,
they need to take in order to become the treasurer?
yeah, that's always, depending upon the person and their skill set. I would say, for the most part, depending on, what your experience is. I mean, if you have a checkbook that you maintain, a personal checkbook that you maintain, then, that's the first step, I think, in, being suitable as a treasurer. But then again, it's going to depend on the complexity of the organization that you're involved with. Um, you know, the checkbook scenario was probably the most experience I was needed for, the homeowners association that I was involved with, because transactions weren't, they were real straightforward and there weren't that many. And so it was almost like, you know, maintaining my own checkbook. But other organizations, like, county associations and the ski association, those are a little more complicated and you get a little more complex type of transactions that you deal with. And I would say if you don't already have accounting experience, you're going to want to do some research and follow up when it comes, especially to reporting, recording, and maintaining those accounts, because you really have to understand the nature. And even though a lot of software, kind of makes it self-explanatory, but it's always good to know the inflow and the outflow of debits and credits and how they affect the financial statements that if you're going to be reporting on them. Even though you may be able to generate a financial with a QuickBooks, you want to be able to understand and interpret that financial statement. So there may be some research that's necessary if you don't already have the accounting background or experience. But depending on, as I said, the individual, if that motivation is there and you're willing to put in the work to learn it and understand it, then it's always doable um, uh, going forward. But the complexity of the type of organization will determine, the extent of the experience that you'll probably need in being successful at that role.
Brenda, can I interject? One of the things that I did as a treasurer with well, I did have some accounting classes, but I'm not an accountant. But one of the things that I did as a treasurer with no accounting experience was I brought on a financial secretary who was an accountant, and then she became the treasurer. So that she was Brenda Holden.
I was hook wink, but that's okay. So next question. So what did you learn when you first became the treasurer that you did not know? Randy.
What did I learn? Uh, the volume of the transactions. Uh, because Far West is so complex, we do have a large number of transactions for our travel program and conventions. And there's just the time requirements during certain periods of the year. You know, after our ski week, for instance, in January, or international trip in February, March, convention in June. There's just a lot of effort required during those periods of time.
So would you do it again if you knew what you were walking into?
I'm still doing it. You know, it is very tough to get volunteers to step up for a treasurer position at a higher level that have the accounting skills necessary to do it.
Jill, so what did you learn when you first became treasurer that you did not know?
Yeah, so I think the biggest surprise for me was the time that it took, meaning it was more time consuming than originally thought. You know, a lot of times, you hear the best scenario would be like an ice skater. You know, you sit and watch an ice skater on that ice, and you see how easy they make it look. But or even on skis, you watch a skier come down the mountain, and you see how easy they make it look. But once you actually, hands on and you're in there, it's quite a different story. So it's the same with the treasurer's role in the financial. It's more time consuming than originally anticipated, and I also think it's more time consuming than what others outside of the financial aspect realize. Because I mean, something as simple as having to correct a transaction on your credit card, the organization's credit card, the amount of time that you spend on the phone with a text trying to get that worked out, it can take hours, and you don't initially anticipate, something like that. And so I think the time commitment being more extenuous than originally anticipated um, is probably the biggest thing, when I stepped into the role of being a treasurer.
So what is the most important thing that you would tell a new treasurer? Jill?
The most important thing I would suggest is to try to um, keep accurate, complete records and information to provide your organization. It's so important to have a good record, because there are so many different situations that occur, and if you're in the best position of being organized and to speak from the reality of those transactions, I think that would be the best uh, position for any treasurer to be in, is to be able to speak honestly and um, accurately about the status of the organization. And don't be afraid to tell the organization, the members, or the executive board the bad news. Because, I mean, if there's a situation that's going to be dire for that organization, then, it's the treasurer's role to be the bearer of bad news. And sometimes, that you may not be popular, and in some cases you may not be liked, for bearing bad news. But that goes with the role of being a treasurer. You want to be as accurate and as honest about the reality of the situation for that organization as possible.
Brenda, I just want to, as a time check, boy, this has gone fast. We only have another 10 minutes or so, and I didn't know if there are others on this call that have questions. Raise your hand if you have a question and you wanted to ask the panelists, and then we can get to you. Go ahead, Brenda.
Randy, the same question. What would you tell the new treasurer?
What would I tell the new treasurer? Good luck. No, you know, the same as what Joel said. It's being as accurate as you can and maintaining the records. Develop your filing system, or if a filing system exists, you know, go with it, but maintain accurate records and know where those records are.
So
I'm
what
sorry.
other duties? Good, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, guys. I said another 10 minutes. We actually have until 8 o'clock. I made a mistake. So we still have some time. Good. Thank you.
Okay. So what other duties or responsibilities, in addition to financial budgeting and reporting, are you responsible for? Joel?
Other duties and responsibilities. Well, I guess that I'm responsible for, it really only centers around those roles that you just named off. I guess, other aspects would be um, maybe facilitator when it comes to um, handling, transactions where a vendor or um, a resort or a company, may need, financial information in order to set up an account, or being able to, facilitate the the transaction so that people are getting paid in a timely manner. Um, and I guess there's a little bit of researcher and detective type roles come out when you have to look into certain transactions and certain um, situations where if you feel something isn't right, or there may be something um, uh, 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 fishy about a transaction, you may have to look into it a little deeper and try to uh, establish a comfort level that everything is okay with that transaction. And so I think, for the treasurer, you're, the fiscal watchdog. You're guardian of those finances and making sure that they are spent and utilized accordingly. And so you always want to be, on the lookout for, things that may um, compromise the financial position of the organization. And I always, suggest and encourage, and a lot of people, again, may not like you for this, but you maintain a level of skepticism with anything and everything and everybody. It's like, nobody, you know, is going to be perfect, but at the same time, you question the things that people are doing and saying, and so, you may get some pushback, or people may feel, why do I have to answer this, or why do I have to, do this? But as a financial person, your goal and your ultimate job is to protect the funds of that organization.
Randy, do you have any
Yeah,
other?
from a financial aspect, I totally agree with what Joel said. What I really enjoy are the other aspects of the job, which to me would be risk management, insurance programs, uh, contract review, and contract compliance, the bigger picture aspects of it. I get involved in reviewing just about every contract that Far West executes. And between the contract review, uh, we learned a lot during COVID. I think, as most people did, we had contracts that we could not fulfill, that we had to go back and renegotiate. And we spent hours and days renegotiating contracts. And what came out of that is we worked with an attorney and developed our own force majeure clause, which we now require in each of our contracts, which does a better job of protecting the organization as a whole. So it's those bigger picture items that really I look forward to.
Randy, one of those additional items is CST. Could you speak to some of the responsibilities from a CST perspective, California Seller of Travel perspective?
Yeah, we have two VPs of travel in Far West, and they're responsible for either the North American travel program or the international travel program. And we have to file the annual licensing with California Seller Travel and also the Travel Restitution Fund. And it's making sure that we are in compliance with all the CST regulations. As someone had asked before, while we have so many bank accounts, two of those accounts are trust accounts for our travel, which we have to comply with CST. Uh, we also have credit card policies that we have throughout the organization to make sure that we comply with those CST regulations.
So, what was the best day you had as a treasurer, and what was the worst day you had as a treasurer? Joe.
Um, and I would say probably the best day, and then I'll, with this same scenario, pluralize it because it becomes the best days. But the best day for me, I can remember back in early 2000 being, I believe we were at Park City and watching our youth athletes compete and being able to see some of the youth athletes for the first time, take the podium and receive those medals. To me, that was like the best experience being there and being a part of, something like that. And that sort of rolls into all of the other events and activities, that the ski organization is involved with. When we have competitions and we have events, to see the achievements and the excitement and enthusiasm of others, that is what I think I get most out of being a treasurer. Because behind the scenes, we're doing things to make everything work. And then to see it culminate into, happiness for, an athlete or even members that show up at your event and say they had a really great time, that to me, those are the best experiences. And that has been the best experience for me to be able to see uh, our athletes take the podium. Worst experience, um, I think the worst experience, has been when there's resistance and difficulty um, of, making the financial work sort of difficult. I think that's probably the toughest experience where, if you tell somebody that, um, I need a receipt that's original to support this payout that you're requesting, and you get resistance for something like that. Well, I don't have a receipt. Well, I lost my receipt. Well, that line of excuses kind of takes away from the job, knowing that, as a treasurer, that's the responsibility that we have to ensure that we have adequate supporting documentation for those funds that are being dispersed. And so when you get resistance from payees about information that you may want to satisfy a payout request. That to me takes away from the role of being a treasurer. It takes away from the happiness, but like I said, there are more happy times than there are those unhappy times.
Randy, the best day and the worst day.
I wouldn't say best day, but best times is seeing the success of our athletic scholarship program and working with the different chairs of that program over the years to build that program. Uh, this these last couple days in New Zealand, AJ Hurt, who was a multi-time Far West Ski Association and Sierra Council athletic scholarship recipient, podiumed in all three races, won 2 out of the 3 races in the New Zealand series. And to see her success and to meet those types of athletes that we are supporting is really, truly priceless to me. Uh, Again, maybe outside the role of treasurer, but because of the breadth and width of the Far West programs, I've had the opportunity to meet a lot of world class athletes, people like Tom Kelly at US Skiing, Tiger Shaw, who was a former CEO of US Skiing. So those are the high points. I think the low point was when I decided to run for treasurer the second time around. And it was after the former treasurer submitted financials that were not GAP compliant.
Okay.
So after I got elected, I spent the next 2 to 3 months redoing everything for the prior year. So it was a lot of effort uh, and review, etc., to get the statements to where they should have been GAP compliant.
Very interesting that that both of the responses were their best times were watching the youth athletes succeed. So that's very interesting. We also had a question from Toya. Toya, are you able to unmute yourself?
I am able to. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Okay. Hello, everyone. And I do want to thank everyone for just putting this together, or those that were involved in putting this together. It has been very helpful. Question. How do you handle audits at the club level? And I'm saying it maybe, I know you all are members of different organizations. So we have a ski club of approximately, on average, like 100 members, sometimes less. So do you all have an audit committee made up of qualified or, people with the necessary skills or background or experience in auditing, like made up of club members, or do you do external audits, and how often, frequently, like with change of officers? Um, I'd appreciate it. Your feedback.
Yeah, I'll address that first. Uh, at the Far West level, we do not do a formal audit. The last really audit we went through was an IRS tax audit back in the early 2000s, and that was pretty intensive. Uh, what happens at the Far West level is the treasurer is not a signer on any of the bank accounts. Because the treasurer has responsibility of doing the posting and the bank reconciliations, the treasurer is not a signer. We made that change when we looked into fiduciary liability insurance, and that was one of the requirements for the fiduciary liability insurance. And even though we decided not to purchase that insurance, we put a lot of those policies and procedures in place.
Yeah, and I would suggest at the club level that if you don't necessarily need to have an audit you know, then at a minimum, have maybe a small group, at least, you know, 2 or 3 people that can serve as a audit review type of committee so that someone is looking at those transactions and the activities that go on, and that it's not all centralized to just one single individual. Because, you know, everyone as humans, you know, are subject to make mistakes. And so the more eyes you have looking at the financials that are coming out of that club or organization, I think the better off you are. Um, and the board itself should be reviewing that information um, as you provide it to them. So, you know, as a club, you know, you provide financial information to, you know, the club president and the rest of the board members of that club. So they should also serve in that capacity of being able to review and verify the financial information if you don't necessarily have a need for an external auditor to actually come in and perform a audit of your financials.
Thank you very
Toya,
much. Yes.
Toya, I would also recommend if your bylaws state that your club is required to have an audit each year, to get your bylaws changed to take the word audit out and call it a financial review.
Right.
Because with the word audit, if you have a professional accountant, CPA, they won't be able to do it because they would have to adhere to professional standards in order to do that. And that's not what you're looking for.
Thank you. I don't think our bylaws even speak to it. However, I do think we should add the financial review. So thank you.
Okay.
So that's all the questions I have. Does anybody have any questions for our panelists?
It looks like we
I
have some council, some past council treasurers and past Far West presidents on the call, and current Far West presidents. Here's your chance to ask Randy some questions that you've always wanted to know.
I have one more question. Sorry, because I have this whole panel. I'm like, okay, all the things I wanted to know. We have been looking for. I heard Randy, I think, share that he used Dropbox for vouchers and for like check requests, and I think that is helpful. I've been a treasurer treasurer and financial secretary for a sorority years and years ago, and so we did have to have an external audit. So that's why I was asking. So I am thinking about the paper trail. I wanted to know, but it is often tedious to email out a hard copy voucher and get the president or get the financial secretary, get the president, get the committee chair to send that. And by the time you've printed and then taken other copies, it becomes a bit burdensome. I was looking and have been looking for some type of free or very low cost electronic routing system, some type of service that could route a voucher through, that was not a significant financial investment. I don't know if you all have used, some other means or have something to recommend.
Ooh.
We use DocuSign at work. I don't know the cost, but it's very simple to use. And you can have several people at once. If something going to several people at once to be signed, and it all comes back, or you can have a hierarchy. This person signed, this person, this person. Well, I don't think it's very expensive, but I couldn't tell you how much it is.
Thank you.
And you're starting to see more and more DocuSign type of transactions, and
Yeah.
I think that really do cut down on the back and forth of, having to send information for review and a signature. DocuSign can make it a little quicker.
Mm-hmm. It's great.
Joe has his hand up.
Yes, the simplest thing to have your people take a photo with their camera and then email that photo to you. That's the simplest, and at least it's cost effective. Doesn't cost anything. Take a photo of the receipt and then just email, forward it, share it with you via email or text or what have you.
Thank you.
That works as long as that photo is not embedded in the email or becomes a part. If it's a separate
Mhm.
attachment, it's fine. But if it's embedded in the email, then the treasurer cannot print that uh, with high quality
Mhm.
in a format that works.
Yeah, I was only speaking to it as being as an attachment, not
Okay.
embedded in an
Yeah.
email. When I've done it, I haven't even. I've just that's all I sent. I've not even put any text in the email. I just here's your receipt in the subject line and just attach it and send it.
So we have 15 minutes left. Does anybody else have any other questions?
I do. Does anybody have any recent experience filing IRS Form 1024 to obtain nonprofit status? I'm filling one out for a membership organization, and it has to be filed online. Number one. Number two, when you go to the government forms, if you answer the questions, it could be as many as 47 pages for a
Oh my
Form
God.
1024. And when you submit it, it requires a payment of $600. Now, I don't remember having to pay $600 for a membership organization to get nonprofit approval. Randy, do you have any experience in that? Recent experience?
I do not.
This is a membership organization, so it's kind of like a business league,
Is
basically.
it a C7?
C6.
I don't have any experience either.
Okay.
I think we paid somebody when we set up our charity. So yes, no.
Steve, I guess Google. I don't know.
Google.
Nowadays you have AI, so if you go to Chat GPT, you can ask your question and it'll come up and fill out everything for you, I guess. But yeah, no, I'm not familiar with that either, Steve.
Well, it just seemed like $600 is a lot of money to fork over just to get that approval through. And I don't think a C3 or a 501c3, which requires, I believe, a Form 1025, has a fee that high, but I haven't filled one of those out in a while either.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's
Good luck.
So I'm going to
Take
turn it back
notes.
over to Joe. It's all about you, Joe.
Okay, well, we didn't do introductions, but I'm Joe Simpson. I'm the chair of the board of trustees for the FWSA Ski Association. And thank you all for participating tonight. And thank you to Randy and Joel for stepping up, and Brenda. It's been very informative. I think I also handle the books for my small council, so it's been informative, and I'm really glad I don't have the complexity that they talked about. But thank you all for attending, and thank you, Todd, for setting this up and also doing a tremendous amount of outreach for it. And I hope that the ones of you that are, everybody that's on will continue to try to promote these sessions. This is our second Sips and Snacks session. We had one in the spring for secretaries, and then this is the second one for treasurers. And then we're going to be doing one in the fall for marketing. And Debbie Core, who's on this tonight, is going to be one of the panelists for that session. So we're looking forward to that because all of us want to market our organizations, and I think that'll prove very helpful. So thank you all for attending. And if is there anything else before we sign off? Todd.
Oh, I think you knocked it out of the park. Thanks everyone, and thanks all of you that that participated. And make sure to look for the recording. We will be sharing the recording. Thanks again.
Don't forget,
All
don't
All
right,
right.
forget to
bye
stop.
guys. Thank
Don't
you.
All
forget
right.
to
Good luck,
stop the
everyone.
recording.
Thank you. Great
Okay.
session.